Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate, and today we are going to be giving our outlook for severe weather for the rest of the month as well as into May. Why is it so bad right now? When can severe weather start to ramp up again? How bad will it be? All those questions will hopefully be answered by the end of this video, and so please stay tuned all the way throughout if you want more information on that. But before we get started, I'd like to take the time to ask you all, please be sure to leave a like on this video. Leaving a like helps me so that this information can get out to more people. So if you guys would please leave a like for me, that would be greatly appreciated. Subscribe if you're new. Turn on notifications as I take a piece of hair out of my eye. This is a great start to the video. And please be sure to share this with friends, family on social media. Follow me on social medias. And now we shall get started with the video. So first off, why is it so quiet right now? You know, we had marginal risk after marginal risk. You know, in March we had 2 high risks. We had, what, 3 or 4 moderates, something like that. A lot of action across the board for the most part. So why is it so slow right now in the middle of April? Well, right now we're kind of in this we're in this slow pattern. Before we were in a pattern to where we would be in some severe weather and then we'd take a break for like a couple of days and then we'd get into severe weather again. We'd take a break for a couple of days. You know, like it would be 3 to 4 day stretch, you know, maybe 4 to 5 days as well. That's usually severe weather would be like rapid fire in some of these like active periods, like in April or May. But we were in this pattern to where we'd have severe weather, we'd take a break for 3 or 4 days. And, you know, that's an extended break in between severe weather events. But right now, we're pretty slow right now. There isn't anything happening all too much because of a couple things. So first off, let's discuss as to where the severe weather is first. Massive marginal here, which extends from Jacksonville all the way down towards places like Biloxi and New Orleans, a little bit too far south of Mobile. But then you also have a little bit of a marginal risk down near Brownsville, Texas. So a consolidated area of severe storms likely within this system. If we take a look at the conditions, you have a 5% chance of hail sizes from 1 inch or greater within 25 miles of a point. You also have a 5% chance for gusty winds over 58 miles per hour within a point. And you have a small 2% chance for tornadoes within Gainesville and Lake City, Florida. So if you guys live over there, you guys definitely need to monitor it. It's a marginal risk, so it's a 1 out of 5 on the severe weather threshold, according to the Storm Prediction Center, but still something that, you know, you obviously need to pay attention to your weather radio. Have one. If not, please consider turning on emergency notifications. Then we go on to our day 2 risk, and this is a very, very small window right here. It's even smaller than the one we had here today. So tomorrow, the risk for severe storms plagues places like Tampa, St. Petersburg, Orlando, Clearwater, Spring Hill. Your guys is over there you have a marginal risk for severe weather. 5% hail, 5% wind, 0% as of right now for tornadoes. But still very, very narrow window. And then after that, the day 3 outlook, which is basically on Monday, is just some general thunderstorms for the most part across the board here. So nothing really to be too concerned about as of right now. But why we are very inactive right now is because of the placement of the jet stream. Yes, wind shear does play a factor in whether or not you'll get severe storms, believe it or not. So it may not just be the amount of energy that you have within a setup. It's also where the placement of these events are as well. So definitely something to watch out for as you continue to as people try to forecast. So what I mean by this is right here is a giant low pressure system. You can see how these wind barbs are moving these winds counterclockwise around the low pressure system. And so right there is a clear low pressure system. You also have your subtropical jet, which resides here within the Gulf of Mexico. And so your subtropical jet actually kind of dipped a bit further into the United States here. You actually have a shortwave trough right here, right within this miniature low pressure system. But right here, you can see your subtropical jet basically reside right over these areas of the deep south. And for some instances, you know, for severe weather, that may be good. But because there's no moisture up there, this subtropical jet isn't allowing for any sort of moisture return. Or basically when the warm front comes in behind and allows moisture to seep into the United States. And I'll show you a bit more as to what moisture return is in a bit. But as of right now, there's kind of this stationary boundary that's in place that's holding this storm, or holding the energy from moving into the United States. So that's the reason why it's pretty cold in some of these areas. And you've had a lot of Arctic blasts that are coming in, and that a lot of snow is being present within these areas. So look for these areas to continue to stay a little bit cooler, especially towards the north. I wouldn't anticipate any more or any less from that, I should say. But mainly because the subtropical jet is in place, causing a stationary boundary within the Gulf of Mexico, and it's really just holding that moisture right within the Gulf of Mexico, holding that in place. So if we take a look, this is the 500 millibar wind speeds right here, or the wind shear, I should say. The bottom right here indicates the strength of your wind speed in knots. So you typically want your wind shear to be around 40 to 45 knots in order to consider some strong storms. So there would be some plenty strong wind shear if it had energy. But for the most part, your jet stream is really holding this moisture in place, because it's not giving it any sort of instance to get that moisture return back into the United States. So let's continue to play out, see how this works here. So you can see the subtropical jet continues to stay within this area. It doesn't look like it's moving anytime soon, and this is what I was talking about with a stationary boundary. You guys can clearly see that this thing hasn't, this subtropical jet hasn't moved further north. It hasn't moved further south a whole lot. It stayed right in the same spot for the most part. And whenever this starts to move out, that's when you guys can start to anticipate some severe weather. So according to the GFS here, you can see that this starts to end right towards Wednesday. Wednesday is when the stationary boundary starts to seed out. And after Wednesday, from Wednesday onwards, that's when we can start to see some more significant severe weather. Because the pattern now, like it has always been, is it's always been this low pressure system to create big trough, followed by a huge ridge to where it will continue to just swirl up and down, and you'll see what I mean. So here's a low pressure right here. Whenever these lines dip down like this is a trough. Whenever the lines go up like this, that is a ridge. There's a low pressure system right here, so there's a ridge right here. Here is a trough. So just by following that, you can clearly see massive low pressure here with a massive trough moving in with these areas. Some wind shear amounts can actually get over 100 knots, which is very strong. Now, in regards to as to whether or not you'll see some severe weather out in front of this, I doubt it. There's not enough moisture to be able to seed in. And so going back into that moisture return, you would need an area to where nothing would be clogging the south like this, and you'd have to have that ridge build up to where the moisture can return into that open gap, so that when the low pressure system comes through with the next trough, then it'll seep up all of that moisture and be able to turn it into severe storms. So that's what we're gonna try and look for here with this system. So the first time you see that gap, that's when you know there's going to be moisture within there, most likely. And you can see here's the next ridge. Here's another ridge right here. So this is where your moisture return would seep in. It's returning to the United States. And so you have your low pressure system, and right within this area on the 22nd, would not be surprised here in Texas, you guys would see some severe weather. So on Thursday, you guys could easily see some severe weather. And then on Friday, which just so happens to be my birthday, you guys could potentially see some severe weather here towards places in the deep south, maybe even the southern Ozarks. But right within there on Friday, you guys could see some severe weather. On Saturday, I'm anticipating it to be a bit more towards Florida and stuff like that. But one thing that I do want to mention is that after this massive ridge gets built up, I mean, look at this. The low pressure system gets steered south, mainly because if we take a look back at the scans here, you can see that there's a massive high pressure right here that's moving north. So this high pressure that is coming here from the Pacific is starting to create this pattern here, this massive trough, massive ridge. So here's your massive ridge that'll be able to build up. And typically when ridges go into Canada, that's when you know you have a very strong pattern, very strong ridge and trough. The ridges, if it was in summer, would be called an omega block because it would basically be blocking all the severe weather from coming into the United States. But you can still see the low pressure dip off towards the south. Massive ridge starting to build, and so just by me looking at that, I would fully anticipate another round of storms into the deep south. But as we continue to play it out, you can see the high pressure system continues to move on through, and here's your low pressure system, which is moving off into the Pacific. And it seems your high pressure system may be a bit more centralized down towards the south, so even I can't fully predict the models, but your high pressure system is more or less placed up to the top, so maybe the low pressure system could move off towards the north and try and go over the actual high pressure system, maybe create some severe weather for places like the northern plains. And that's exactly what's happening here. You can see the high pressure system right here. It's basically blocking the south, and so you could have some moisture that could return here within some of these areas up into the north and east. Or not the north and east, towards the north and maybe even the central plains. So on Tuesday, the following week, on the 27th, the possibility for severe weather is here as well, with some strong wind shear at the upper levels at 500 millibar winds. Could very easily be possible. And so that right here, the 27th is plausible because of how the high pressure continues to stay south, and how it just moves the low pressure system off to the north. So I wouldn't be surprised if this comes into fruition here. Maybe a little bit weaker, maybe a little bit stronger, but the placement of the low pressure system, I would not be surprised as to whether or not it actually sustains. But still something to monitor with all of that. That severe weather season is mainly because there's a lot of blocking. There's a stationary boundary in place down here at the in the deep south. So the moisture is not returning into these general areas, and so it's creating a lot of cool temperatures up for the north, a lot of cold temperatures, including the recent snowstorm that was up towards the northeast. So definitely something we're going to want to monitor as we continue to move on forwards, especially the threat for severe weather to start to occur on the 22nd on Thursday. So if most of you are going to ask if I'm going to live stream or not, I have no clue. We are still, a good almost week away from this event. So I can't exactly say for certain as to whether or not these things are going to be strong because, we're not close enough from that. There's still could be changes within the models, but we're still going to want to continue to monitor this to the best of our ability. So severe weather season will start to ramp back up, and when that starts to ramp back up, we will be here to cover it. Another thing that we're going to want to cover, and this has nothing to do with the United States, but this is just a bit of a sneak peek as to what you guys can expect for the fall, and that is a giant typhoon that is currently ongoing. I mean, look at this. This thing right here is absolutely massive. Surigay is heading off into the Philippines right now. And here, let's just go on to Google Earth real quickly. And look at this storm. This storm looks absolutely massive. This right now actually is a what would be qualified as a Category 5 hurricane. This is a super typhoon. And you can clearly see the outline of the Philippines right within here. So here is the Philippines, and here is Surigay. And this is a massive storm right now. It actually, if you guys could believe it or not, this thing has been identified as a 180 mile per hour typhoon, and which is a 155 knots is what they said it was, 150 knots, something like that. But regardless, this is a massive storm, and a very strong storm to say the least. Dvorak. Let's see if I can actually take a look at the Dvorak thing, which is basically this this thing that runs through satellite. Dvorak at the moment, the Dvorak technique actually says, just based off of satellite analysis, that this thing would be under 900 millibars, and it would be 170 knot storm, which is insane because that's over 200 miles per hour. And that right there, in my opinion, is just mind-blowing. The fact that this storm right now is, occurring, and it's moving that close to the Philippines, which had a very strong, had two very strong typhoons last year impacted these areas. And so you can clearly see within the storm a very well-defined eye, and how these reds and these blacks almost encircle this entire eye structure, and how it is a perfect circle. I mean, almost a perfect circle within these areas. So, very strong typhoon. Something that we're going to want to continue to watch. And you could still see these bands that are swirling within the storm. So, this has clear, strong presentation within this. I don't foresee this to weaken all too much, all too soon. But I could see it start to weaken towards like the end of today into tomorrow. It's still early in the morning for them over there. It's you have to realize time zones are a big thing when it comes to what's happening now and what's happening from right here, what's happening over there. So something to watch out for. But another thing here is that here's the updated track for Surigay, and you can see the path that it took before it became a hurricane, and now, or not even a hurricane, a super typhoon, I should say. I'm so used to saying that with the tropical stuff that is happening, in the Atlantic. It's called typhoons over here, so something I gotta get used to for right now. But you can see 155 knot storm. That is a very, very strong storm as of right now. I mean, my goodness. I very, very strong 180 mile per hour typhoon. If it intensifies further, then I'll just be stunned. But you can see how close it gets to the Philippines. Some areas in the Philippines, including an area that got impacted by Typhoon Gale, gets within the hurricane wind force area. Could get there right along, I believe that's what, Sunday evening? Yeah, Sunday evening, could very easily see some hurricane force winds within some of those areas. So definitely something that the people in the Philippines need to continue to watch as this continues to move on through. Another thing I want to take a look, actually, we're not going to use that. We're going to use the ensemble models, and we're going to use both the Euro and the GFS for this. So the one thing that I have found pretty concerning as of late, not that, we should be all too concerned about what happens with these models, because the one model is very insignificant in tropical forecasting compared to another. But if we take a look at the Euro ensemble models, you can see that the Euro actually takes it a lot closer to the Philippines. And actually, some of these ensemble models, where it starts to turn yellow and green over here over land, this means that it makes a direct landfall with some of these areas here in the mainland of the Philippines. And that is not good, because anytime a super typhoon is knocking on the door of a potential landfall, that could cause some major damage across the board, catastrophic damage, and that is not something to look forward to by any stretch of the imagination. But this black line basically takes into account the all the ensemble models and places it in the middle, the mean of all of this, and so you can see it gets very close to almost making a landfall in the northern parts of the Philippines. So we are really going to have to watch out as this continues to get closer and closer. The GEFS says that it's going to stay relatively out to sea. You have a couple, literally a couple ensemble models that stir away from the track and move on to the Philippines. But for the most part, it stays relatively out to sea, and that is a good thing. Still wouldn't advise anyone being along the coast here in the Philippines. Rip currents and storm surge is still a thing, and that it could still do damage to people, maybe even to people's livelihoods. So I would continue advising staying indoors as this storm continues to move on through. But definitely something that we're going to want to watch as this continues to move off. All right, let's take a look at Weather Bell real quickly. I'm not sure. I haven't played around with Weather Bell in regards to the models for these storms. But let us see. Tropical forecast. There we go. HWRF here is Surrey, and oh my goodness, you can see all the stuff here. So that's the hurricane panel. Let's take a look at the 10-meter wind speeds, which is basically like 30 feet up above the sea level. So you can see, for the most part, very strong typhoon. I mean, this is all here in, I believe, miles per hour. Let's actually go into knots, because I feel like that would be represent a whole lot better with this storm. So, you know what? Nah, we'll do miles per hour because we can see the max in miles per hour. So as of right now, with the this is the HWRF model, or the hurricane model on drugs for the most part. I like to say that because it actually over-exaggerates some storms, but it's the only model, ironically, to predict rapid intensification. So because it's doing that right now, we can't exactly say that this thing is entirely wrong, but it gets the placement of these storms relatively accurate. So we'll use this model for the most part, just maybe not the intensity, but we'll have to continue to see with this model run. So you can clearly see these burgundies are these very strong wind speeds and upwards of 100 miles per hour, maybe even higher in some spots. The maximum, if we pan down to the bottom here, you can see that the max wind speed it sees on this current frame is 154.6 miles per hour, which is very strong. And so as this continues to move towards the Philippines, it doesn't differ from that until it gets towards the latter stages of tonight for us. So basically the afternoon into the evening for them over into the Philippines. And that's where you can see the eyes start to wobble a bit more, become a bit more of an oval shape. And so as this continues to head on through, it does forecast to actually go through an eye wall replacement cycle on this model. I didn't actually know it could do that, but the maximum at one point actually got to 157.8 miles per hour winds, according to this. Now, we obviously know that's not what it is right now. It's clearly 180 mile per hour winds, and, you know, that's nothing to really say about that, but, you know, that's what has been designated for the storm as a 180 mile per hour wind typhoon, and so we'll just have to continue to interpret as to this moves along, but clearly as the storm gets closer and closer towards the Philippines, that's when this thing starts to weaken. The maximum wind speed in miles per hour starts to get below 150, and and as it starts to head closer and closer, the HWRF model actually says that it gets close to the Philippines, but some areas here along the coast could see wind speeds and upwards of, I'd say, around maybe tropical storm force winds. You might see some that are along the coast that actually might see higher than that, but for the most part, it actually seems relatively tame, and that it doesn't seem that it's going to get all too close to the Philippines before it continues to ride out into the Pacific. So that is the good news there for the Philippines within this storm. So one thing that I also do want to mention is that we do have, this is Google Earth Pro that we have here with us. And another thing that's just basically a sneak peek for people who might be interested in tropical weather is, with Google Earth, we have these cool displays that can show us the satellite for us, but we also have aircraft reconnaissance. Yes, you heard me correctly. We can map out and put, tracks over where the hurricane hunters are going into these storms in the Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific. And so, if we ever do live coverage of hurricanes and stuff like that, or tropical storms, be sure to be on the lookout for that reconnaissance. And it'll basically be flying right over the satellite imagery, which will make it look like these things, actual, hurricane hunters are flying through the storm live time. But, you'll be able to see where it's going for the most part. But as of right now, I don't know where my display went. There it is. There's my display. Something to be really excited about as time moves along. But anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video here. If you did, please be sure to leave a like. Subscribe if you're new. Turn on notifications. Share this with friends and family. Get excited for the ramping up of severe weather. Some people may not be more excited than others. And then get excited for hurricane season. Because we clearly have all the tools here for you all to be able to discuss as to the storm's capabilities here. Sure, they're not going to be as finite because the satellite is not exactly close to the hurricane or the typhoon, but this is a very strong, we can dictate as to whether storms are very strong or not. And, as we continue to go on forward, we'll continue to cover it to the best of our abilities. So if you guys are excited for even hurricane season, typhoon season, stuff like that, please be sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe and turn on notifications. That's going to be it for me. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.